Hey, and welcome guys. As you can tell by the title of the video, it's time for another budget build. This time we're using the AMT Vor'Cha, this kit I bought, as you can see here, from eBay. I forget exactly how much I paid for it, probably around 10-15 bucks. It looks like everything's here. Obviously I've went ahead and opened it and looked at it. You see all my red clear parts. This is the older kit. I think it was re-released kit that had like the dome base. This is the one that has the different kind of base on it. Anyway, so I want to do something fun with this, obviously. And so what I've already did is I started printing out some 3D parts. I want to replace the front section, and it was my understanding that that was always kind of a replaceable section, that front. Let's see if I can find the piece. The front part of the ship was like modular, and you could replace it. So I'm just going to have fun with this kit. It's not going to be canon by any means, but will be some kind of Vor'Cha type ship. And I'm going to replace like the front section. Here I had this 3D printed part. Now this was off Thingiverse, and it was from a different Klingon ship, like a D4, D5 something, but I've modified it quite a bit. I've removed, it had like the round bulbous section underneath. I added on a few parts to it. In Tinkercad, I took the part, edited it off, and in Tinkercad I did some edits to it, and then changed the scaling and size of it. So I also added in a hole. As you can see, it goes all the way through, so we can light that kind of like a torpedo launcher type thing, and that's the plan. So I did print out a couple different sizes. They're basically the same dimensions, other than one slightly thicker than the other. I'll just have to wait and see once I get the ship built what looks more in scale with the rest of the ship. So obviously this is going to go up front here. There will be a little bit of gap filling and stuff going on, but that's just part of this kind of sort of kitbash kind of ship, or different version of the Vor'Cha. I also have printing out a different section to replace that rear upper part, that kind of triangle part, as you see here, that typically goes right here. And it's more from, again, another file from the, I forget the name of the class of ship, but it's very similar, except it has like another part that comes out further. So those in the process of printing out. Also printing out some cannons from a different ship. And I'm doing it a little bit bigger. I printed this out first, and the plan is to kind of attach it down here. And I don't know if this is quite big enough. I think I want them a little bit bigger. So that's the plan right now. I do plan on doing some lighting. I don't know if I'm going to do like a lot of window lighting. For me, this is a warship. It's heavily armored, and I just can't see a lot of windows and stuff on it. And so I may not go heavy on that. I do plan on lighting the engines in the back, the warp nacelles, which obviously have the clear parts. Plan on lighting those and just having some fun with this, and probably keeping it in that kind of green turquoise bluish green color excuse me, is the plan for the paint scheme. So that's the plan right now. So I'm just going to get busy with all this, and we'll see where it leads us. All right, you can see here I'm working on one of the warp nacelles. Now I'm getting ready to seal this up. I've already glued in the clear pieces, as you can see here, but I've went ahead and took some parchment paper and just using some canopy glue. I've glued some parchment paper over some of the parts here to help give some light diffusion when I go to light this. As you can see here, I've prepared kind of this hodgepodge of 3mm red LEDs, and I will kind of shove these in to kind of this position and then over here, and then glue this, and then of course that will come out the edge where I cut a opening. So it will be like that, plenty of room for our wiring, and then I'll have to seal all that up. So that's how I'm lighting the warp nacelles. And just want to show you before I close that up, and I'll be doing the same thing, of course, on the other one. All right, well, here's the progress on our model kit here. As you can see, I now have the warp nacelles put together, and they are working, they're lighting up. And worked on all the seams. I had to glue them together. You're going to have a big seam that runs all the way around the sides of the nacelle on both of them. So there's a little bit of work getting those cleaned up, but I think they're in a pretty good space now, and they're wiring and they're working. I did a little bit of work on the bottom of the ship, the bottom hull, the bottom half of the hull. As you can see, I put in the sidewalls to go around, the rear panel. I still have to install lights. I will be lighting, I guess this is a torpedo launcher. I'm going to be lighting that, probably a little bit different color than the red impulse engines, but I've put in the sidewalls. As you can see, I've now attached our display stand, and of course that'll be hollow so we can run our power wires up through the model here. As you can see, it's glued in. This is a process that I use to secure on some of these smaller models. First of all, I just cut the hole to a very tight tolerance. So there's a kind of a friction lock just between the brass rod and the plastic. I super glued that in position. Then I take some of this black hot glue and put it all around. I take a piece of styrene, again cut very tight tolerance to the rod, and kind of sandwich that in between the hot glue, and that makes for a very significant bond, especially on something lightweight like this. It's just not going anywhere. I haven't had any issues doing this kind of connection to a display stand in the model. We have the top half here. Only thing I've done here is I've added in the bottom section of this, I guess the bridge section. You can see where I've cut a hole through that, and the reason for that is I decided to run some fiber optics through the actual bridge section. As you can see here, I believe these are 0.25mm fiber optics and very thin, and I can run these through the hole, and we'll have our light source mounted somewhere in this part of the ship. So pretty happy with that. Let's see if I can just kind of aim these toward the light. It's going to be hard to show. Anyway, they do work. I secured those in with some canopy glue. Went through a number of drill bits on these very small holes that I have to open up. Now, I was printing out some stuff, and I don't think I showed this. And I forgot, I couldn't remember the name of the ship, the Negvar class, the kind of the next class of ship that you see in Next Generation. This is kind of that rear section that will be replacing this part of our ship, which goes on the rear here. Normally this would go right here. And I've taken this, sliced it off a Negvar 3D model, modified it a little bit, changed the dimensions a little bit. I added in like a little torpedo launcher up front here. Other than that, that's pretty much the same. Excuse me. And the plan is to mount it somewhere along in there. I may throw a few other bits and pieces in there. Also from the Negvar, I took these, I guess they're cannons of some sort, or launchers, I'm not sure. And those will attach to the bottom of our ship to give it a little more aggressive fighting stance and make it cool, since we're just having fun with this model, not trying to be screen accurate or canon in any way to any ship, This will be my unique ship. As you can see here, I've taken this bridge section. I actually printed out a couple of them. One was a little bit thicker. Otherwise, it's pretty much the same dimensions. I think we'll go with the thinner one. You can see where I've put this piece that connects the forward part. Normally it would be this part. Normally that would connect into there. So I've connected this to kind of cut through, and now that's on there pretty good. And of course that will glue into here. And we'll have to I'll probably have to make some really glue. It's a little bit heavier than the plastic part, so I'm a little concerned about how well this is going to lock in. So I'll probably have to glue this in, maybe some hot glue along with the modeling glue, just to kind of give it some extra grab on there. My plan is to do a few more fiber optics, not a lot. Like I said before, it's a warship, and I just don't envision a lot of windows on a warship, especially one that has a lot of armor plating, as depicted in these in this model. And so a lot of I have to add in the lights, and I'll probably come back once I get that wired up and before we close it off. All right, I'm getting ready to close up my bottom and top half of our hull, along with some of the other parts that are put together. You can see that my warp nacelles are now glued into place. I have a bit of a hodgepodge of wiring going on in here. I have some fiber optics. There's a light that goes up into the top section. I also have a small light here. There's a clear piece on the top section that goes right here, so that will light that. I've also inserted a light right here. What I've noticed is that on the kit part, there's a part which I believe is kind of like a deflector dish, and since I no longer have that, I've made on the underside a kind of what would be a deflector dish area with a light. So kind of keeping that aspect of the ship going. And then I've attached all our wires to the two main wires for our power. I soldered them together to try to keep them from coming undone, and did some covers. There's only one set of wires that leads down to the fiber optics that goes through the bridge that's connected to the top part of our ship. And as you can see, I've also masked off our warp nacelles. So now I'm going to have to cover this up. What I'm going to do is kind of compact these wires down and put some hot glue over it to kind of seal it in place and keep it from moving around inside. I have to be careful of these fiber optics right here. They should be fine. I've tested everything. Everything seems to be working good. So the trick is getting this into place. It pretty much will snap into place now that I have everything else glued in position. This top part should kind of fit inside some grooves, and then we'll glue it into place from there. All right, I have the kitbash all put together, our Vor'Cha variant, as I'm calling it, with parts from, I believe, a D4, D5, and the neck bar. And so a little bit of bodywork, actually quite a bit once it got sealed up. I had a pretty good gap over here. I had to put some styrene in there, but I've attached all of our different pieces except for the disruptor banks that go on the back, because those will be painted separately and attached, so I don't have to worry about masking those off. But I'm pretty excited about how this is looking. So hopefully we can get a nice paint job on it. I think I'm going to go with that kind of turquoise, greenish blue color as seen the first time you see a Vor'Cha. You can also see where I've added in some guns there from the neg bar that I printed out. I think those give it a little bit of character on the underside of our ship. So looking good. And so right now I'm going to go ahead and prime it. Priming is going to show some of the areas that I still need to work on. Again, I had some gaps and stuff. That is common with this model. These older AMT models, it's just part of the deal when you put one of these together. But I like the way it's looking. I think it's, you know, it still kind of looks like a Klingon ship without looking like it's too kit-bashed. All right, I have my primer coat on our model here. I did one primer coat, went back over some rough spots, got most of it taken care of. There's a few little flaws here and there, but nothing major. Overall, I think it's come together pretty well. Most of the seams are taken care of, and now we're ready to move on to our base coat. And for our base coat, I'm going to be using this from Apple Barrel, this green turquoise. It's a satin finish, which I'm not too worried about what the finish is. But anyway, kind of that green color we see in the first appearance of the Vor'Cha in Next Generation. I like that color. So I'm going to be mixing this up. I'm going to do the base color just over this gray as is, and then we'll be adding in some different lighter colors, possibly like some off-whites, maybe some darker colors. And I just want to do a lot of color modulation going on and give it a little bit of scale with the color change going on throughout the ship. So I'm going to get busy putting this base coat on. All right, as you can see here, I now have a base coat on. Now I actually had to repaint it, and the first pass was using this green turquoise. I did a base coat of that, and then I went back in with some darker, I mixed in like some blacks and some lighter colors to this acrylic paint to kind of give it some color modulation. And this was coming out way too dark. It had a very green kind of color to it. And so I decided I wasn't going to go with that. And so I took the green again, the green turquoise, and mixed it in with some sky blue from this Americana multi-surface satin, and it's lightened up. Now on the screen it's looking a bit blue, but it's actually more of a greenish color. It's a little bit more green than what it's coming across on the screen here. So, but I think I'm much more happy with this lighter color. The other color is just way too dark all by itself. So from here I'm going to start striping it off, or masking it off, and doing some the striping. I think I'm going to do some of the red striping on the, I guess, the wings that come out here, or the side of the body that comes out here, maybe a little bit up front, and to give our ship some character. All right, as you can see here, I have a lot of the detail painting done and a little bit of the weathering. I did a lot of masking off of some of the red stripes, the little white squares. I used kind of off-white, those off-whites and gray on these grills back here. A little bit of red accents here and there. And then I took my airbrush and loaded it up with some flat black, and then went along and just started doing these sporadic weathering effects that I saw used heavily on the studio model, that I'm roughly using this as a reference on how to paint it. So I think it's looking pretty good. With the paint job, I'm going to do a little bit more. I got to add on the disruptor banks on the back. I've already clipped off my fiber optics, and they're all working. I'll need to remove all my masking tape, which I can go ahead and show you. Let's see how that's turned out. So you can see right there that it's going to look good. I have to remove it all around. I got the bottoms, the sides. We have these little square panels here. Like that. And even when it's not lit, it actually looks really good. You don't have to light this model. You can leave the clear parts as is, and you still look good that way. So I'm going to remove all the masking tape, and when I come back I'll put it on its base, and we'll look at the finished model. Alright, well, here's our finished AMT Vor'Cha variant kitbash ship with my 3D printed parts from different types of Klingon ships. I think it turned out pretty well, pretty happy with it overall. I think it would fit right in with the Star Trek universe. Pretty happy with how the paint job came out. And to finish up, I just added in the few decals that come with the kit, the markings on each side, on the top and bottom, and then there's some small, I guess, Klingon writing. Don't know what it says, but it's on the pylons here to go to the warp nacelles. And a little bit of dry pastels just to darken up a few areas, give it a little bit more weathering. I didn't want to go overboard with it, so I think I have a good balance there to where it looks weathered and used, but still retains kind of its paint job, and looks like a active warship, I guess you would say. And I'm just happy with how all that turned out. I'll turn on the lights here. Happy with the lighting. Again, went pretty basic with the window lighting. Again, to me, it's a warship. Wouldn't have a lot of windows other than like your bridge and maybe just a few other areas, or maybe for like VIPs or whatever. But happy with how the warp nacelles came out. We have the lighting up front here. We did the lighting in our 3D printed part, which we basically just ran a 3mm red LED. Right here I added on lighting. Typically that's not a lit part, but since we lost like I guess a deflector shield that goes up under there, that's why I added in that to kind of make up the difference on that part. And then on the back we have our impulse engine, and I believe that's a torpedo launcher, but correct me if I'm wrong on what that's supposed to be. And just so look at it, it's all running off the 9-volt battery, as you can see underneath our display base. And it's working just fine on that. And hope you've enjoyed the project. It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun kind of doing my own thing with it. And until next time, everybody have a good one.